If you're just joining us for the first time for one of these, welcome. My name is Sky Landgraf. I'm the Director of Partnerships and Programs here at We Are Moving the Needle. We are so excited to have you. These Fix the Mix career workshops are our opportunity to bring amazing mentorship conversations right to your doorstep or your computer. These are our opportunities to dive in with industry professionals on a range of topics and take a look at what has brought them to where they are in their career today, demystify different areas of the industry, and really dive into some tangible skill sets and ways that you can kind of think about building your career in music and all the different wonderful things at play. I'm so excited to welcome you all. And so without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We'll start with a moderated discussion today with Asha and myself. Thank you to everyone who submitted a question with your RSVP. We've done our best to incorporate a good bunch of those into today's talk. And then from there, we will also have the opportunity to have live Q&A at about the, I would say, 3:45 mark. So hang on to your questions, put them in the chat as we go, and we'll definitely make sure we have some time for that. But without further ado, I would love to introduce today's speaker. We are joined by Asha Dillion, who is an audio producer and music supervisor based in Toronto. I see we get some hands of applause. I will ask folks to go ahead and mute yourself, though, just for recording ease and everyone. But thank you for your excitement. If you want to sign off with some emojis, we love that too. Put it in the chat. So Asha is the SVP and music creative and production at the Wilders. She's got an extensive background in music and audio production and has worked in long format content that allows her to further develop her craft from creative, technical, and production standpoint while remaining in service to each project's story. Her portfolio has included things from studio audio work to collaborating directly with sound designers, composers, musicians, production teams, and creating sonic experiences that leave a lasting impact on audiences worldwide. So I am so excited to welcome you, Asha. Do you want to share where you're calling in from today?
I'm calling in from Toronto, Ontario. It is very, very gloomy outside. I think Zoe, you from Toronto too? Yeah, you can probably attest to how gloomy it is outside. It is a beautiful day, lots of stuff going on, but I'm so excited to be here with everybody and thank you for joining.
Yeah, and you've got a cool, is that a vintage hi-fi behind you? I have to ask.
This is a jukebox from the 70s.
Nice.
It
Okay,
has
cool.
8-track, it has a record player, and it has an AM FM radio in it, but it also has these crazy lights that flash along to a beat. It's pretty cool.
I love that. Amazing. All right, well, maybe we'll get a little taste of that at the end.
Maybe.
Um, so to kick us off, I'd like to start with just asking a little bit like let's get an overview of your journey. You've been at the Wilders for a little while now. But you started in the studio side, if I recall correctly. So like how did this journey manifest? What brought you to sync?
So my journey really started kind of as this little seed of what am I going to do when it comes to music? I always had this like deep love of music and deep love of film and TV. And the two things together were so special to me. And I didn't really have the vernacular to kind of articulate what that was as I was growing up. And so I was a dancer. I studied music in high school. I went to a performing arts high school, and my intention was the whole time to just, be a songwriter, make music, be on stage. And I think a lot of us have that kind of dream in mind. And as I got older, I started to realize, well, there's a whole business behind this, and there are so many things that make music come together. I went to a school called the Harris Institute for the Arts as my post-secondary education, and they offered both a music business program and a a music tech program, which is really where I found my love of being in studio. That was exactly where I found kind of like my calling, I think. And we had classes that ranged from Foley, which is getting into the studio and making the footsteps or clacking coconuts together for horse trot, all the way to music editing. And I loved every bit of that. But I also loved the business side. And I found that both of the things were really, really exciting to me. And so that is where it clicked for me. I very much found this little niche that I thought, okay, this is not a lot of people talk about this, but this is definitely something that I can do and hopefully turn into a career. And from there, I was interning at a record label. I went back to school to do a little bit more in-depth studio studying. And from there, I got a job at a place called Pirate, which is still existing today. They used to mostly do advertising content. And they had a little long format department. And I started by just looking at engineers' mixes. I would go into the studio, I would spend time going through every little piece of it. And that really, really galvanized me because that is, again, that was another like milestone moment for me where I realized, okay, I really love doing this. And I think I can grow, I can learn a lot from being in studio and looking at the sessions that were from established mixers. At the same time, I was doing a lot of budgeting for long format. I was doing a lot of client service related stuff. And all of those things together really, really made me feel quite fulfilled. And like, I wish I had known when I was younger that this was an avenue that I could take because it is really kind of a niche, but a really, really, really interesting part of the business. From there, I jumped over to Grayson Music, which at the time was doing a show for Disney called Backstage. And I was on set for, I want to say maybe 60 days, where we had to produce 90 pieces of music and record all of the actors and actresses. And as we were recording them, we were getting the songs ready and they were shooting them the next day. So it was a really fast, really exciting set to be on. And I learned so much from that. And I went, okay, now I have this whole other aspect of the business that I have learned to really, really love, because I got to see how it was really made and how shows were shot. And it felt like summer camp. And I got to see the songs go from demo form to this fantastic final form with people actually performing them. And then they were being released into the world and kids were loving it. So I got to see kind of like the full circle of it. And that part, I think for me was probably the most beautiful part of the job, was knowing how people were connecting to the music, because I was feeling the same when I was a kid, that there was, you know, I was seeing these shows and seeing these films that meant so much to me, and realizing how much music was a part of that story was probably the most powerful thing that I had experienced as a kid. So to get the opportunity to be a part of that was just a dream come true. And every day I get to work on things that if I could tell my younger self, you're going to be okay, and you're going to be working on things that you've only ever dreamt of, my little Asha would be surprised, would be blown away, and very, very proud. So that's my journey. We've worked on so many incredible things. I've worked on My Little Pony, which was a dream come true for me, Drag Race, another dream come true, and all kinds of other projects that are so special to me. And the fact that I get to know that somewhere somebody's listening to it is, I want that to be my legacy. So, and here I am today talking to you.
That's so beautiful. And I love the way you framed also the world of sync as being so critical to also like music discovery in a lot of ways. Like I can very much relate to that. Like I think we've all can think of a time where we've been watching a movie or a TV show or something, and then you're like, what's that? Like
Yeah. What is that song? And
yeah.
how is it working to the picture? And sometimes it's even more powerful for discovery because it's you are watching these films. It can be an emotional moment and you connect with it, and then you just never forget the first time you've heard that song, and it outlasts. It transcends the picture. It lives with you forever. Yeah.
Well said. I'd love to take a little minute here to we're gonna demystify sync a little bit for folks. So
Yeah.
if you're new to new to this as a field, you kind of touched on this in your intro here, Asha. You in your day-to-day work with licensing of existing work, original songs, and working with producers and songwriters and artists around that, and scores, so composers and all of that. So you've got kind of these three major buckets that are similar but different.
Yeah.
How do each of these all come into play when we're talking about what sync is?
So sometimes we're engaged for just the licensing component. Sometimes we're engaged for just the original music component. And then sometimes we're engaged for the whole thing. And I think a lot of where I cut my teeth was on projects where we're seeing the whole vision and we're responsible for that whole sonic landscape. And score and songs are always talking to each other. And it's trying to find the delicate balance of, if you were to pull back and go, what do I want this soundtrack to say? That's where you might hit your sweet spot. And so it is a lot of interfacing with the composer, but then also thinking about what's the composer doing and how do I support that with the music here while still supporting the story, and knowing that most of our creative projects, people are coming in with a wish list of things. So the wish list often gets rearticulated, and that can be for any amount of reasons. So the licensing aspect fluctuates. It'll change based on the budget. It'll change based on our strategy. We could approach a project and go, we want to showcase up and coming artists. We have an opportunity here to do that. We have a great score that will also support it. So will we strategize that way for the music? There's a lot that goes into that initial discussion that helps to then formulate the plan for whatever that musical storytelling is. So that's a big important part right off the top. And of course, budget also plays a huge part of that. But just because your budget is super high doesn't mean you're going to get everything that you want. And just because your budget is low doesn't mean you're not going to get the stuff that you want. It's kind of the Wild West. And we do our best to support with all of the things that come together to kind of create that sync and soundtrack for a long form piece of art.
Love that. And you mentioned this, you're balancing an interesting role both creatively and on the business side and client management as a result. So like when you're approaching, you just mentioned like the client's going to come in potentially with their own sets of visions, but
Yeah.
you're also tasked with bringing your own set of vision back to them. Like they have an expectation of that as well. And so you're approaching a new project. How do you, as wearing that hat where you're balancing basically, you have all these different buckets of tools. Is it going to be a needle drop? Is it going to be a new song? Like you have a sense of what their vision might be, but you might see it either the same or differently or elevating. Like how do you approach that creative decision making process and balancing in all these different stakeholder elements too?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of the time what happens is there's one key part of the process that happens a little bit after the initial discussion, which is the spotting session, where we are all getting together. So it'll be the music supervisor, the composer, the score composer, the director or the showrunner, depending on if it's a film or if it's a TV show. Usually somebody from a network, if it's for a big streamer or something, will be involved in your spotting session, and some other creative stakeholders. Sometimes they don't agree. Sometimes they all agree and are all aligned on what we're putting together. But it's an opportunity to kind of talk through, okay, well, we know that score can do some heavy lifting here, and it might be really tricky to find a song that takes us through a 3-minute montage. So can score help us articulate that? And how do we look at that from the perspective of knowing we've established what the idea of the score is going to be, and maybe we can decorate it. Maybe we are talking about marrying the score and song, an existing song, or maybe it's we're creating an original song here to help bridge that gap. So we're not leaning so heavily on score. But it's usually a meeting of the minds. And sometimes it's if the composer isn't super comfortable tackling something, then we look at song, and vice versa. If song can't cover something, then we look at score. But the conversation very much is we are collaborating on this one thing together, and we want to make sure that it goes seamlessly. And then budget plays a big factor. So if we run out of money and there's a montage scene or something, we might go, okay, well, we've got $5 left. So can we look at doing score here? And will score take us through? Do we feel like we might want to remove another piece of music so that we can save score for later and throw in another less expensive piece here? So there are a few discussions that kind of circle around what we're doing with an overall soundtrack, but that spotting session is usually the part where we're all coming together and discussing the little pieces that happen. And that's usually when picture is finalized. It's the picture lock, and we are working with something that's fairly final, and we might not even see anything until picture lock. The director and the showrunners are off working on their earlier edits, and occasionally I've seen something at director's cut, but it's not usually the most helpful for us to come in at that stage, because they're just trying to figure out what they've made. They've got a script and they go and they shoot it, and then it's real, and they have to figure out like what did we actually make, and are we cutting what we thought we were making in the first place, or is this something totally different, and how does music support that? So at the picture lock stage, we come in and we're able to kind of discuss like what do we really need here, and what does score want to say, and then how do we amplify score with song or existing pieces of music or some original music.
Awesome. You mentioned just to kind of maybe give a bird's eye perspective of like a typical timeline, like we're mentioning, kind of dug into this spot session. Where does that fall in the timeline of like where you may have like, do you start earlier than that with like brief conversations? Like how maybe like if you have a case study example or anything you want to like talk through a typical timeline.
Yeah, so it tends to vary, but I would say that we're usually involved in pre-production. We're reading scripts. Sometimes there are songs listed in scripts and we have to go out and clear them, or provide alts because they might need to shoot with the songs. So we're usually involved at that stage. And sometimes we're on set. If somebody has to mime something, if there's a performance, and then we have to make sure that everything's okay so that when we get it into the picture lock stage, that we can take it and do all of the magic stuff that we need to do. Sometimes we're on set coaching the actors through a performance or something. That happens quite frequently now. And sometimes you'll have actors playing drummers or something, and we have to help them look like they're actually drummers every once in a while.
I'm imagining every dance scene I've ever seen in a movie.
Yes, exactly. So we get involved quite early on in the process, especially if we're writing original songs that need to be shot too. And then I would say that's, shows can shoot for 2 months, shows can shoot for 6 months. It just depends on what their timeline is. And we're pretty much with the show until it's released, because we are in post with them. We are in the studio with them when they're doing their final mixes. We're handling all the licensing in the back end. So I'm usually on a project for, I would say, at least a year, sometimes a little bit longer. In the cases of animation, where the pipeline is much, much longer, it could be 3 years, it could be 4 years. We are often involved in the pre-production conversation on the animation side too. So it's a long haul, but it's important to build that relationship with the client and start developing the kind of shared language, so that the final product is a combination of all of the things that the client was wanting and the creativity that we're able to offer on our end of things.
Awesome. And so when you're working with new songs or like original pieces for placement or working with composers, how does that process look for your team? Like, how are you identifying new folks that you want to work with? What does it mean from like their perspective for our, rising producers in the room here and rising composers and songwriters? What does it mean for them to be getting themselves in a place where they would be sync ready for working with you on projects like this?
Yeah, so for composers, I would usually say getting a little reel together just to show your skill as it relates to picture is always a good thing. It's not, I wouldn't say that it's the same for an artist that is looking to do sync. For composers, usually we just want to see that you've got some kind of sensibility as it relates to how to articulate yourself to picture. And we find that, and I'm sure it's the same. So we have tax incentives in Canada that keep a lot of work here in Canada or encourage co-production. And part of one of those requirements is to have a Canadian composer to fulfill that spot. So you see a lot of the same names popping up. And over the last few years, for us, it's been an important part of our mandate to be encouraging new composers to get in the room, get some credits under their belts. And sometimes that is pairing them with somebody who's very experienced so that they learn the ropes, because TV is very different than something like advertising or cutting a record. And sometimes that is just having us as mentors to be able to talk them through what client feedback looks like and how to interpret that and how to re-articulate that. And so the first step I would say is to have a reel. And even if you're not engaged on projects, I would say take a scene from something and practice. Take a scene from your favorite movie and see how you would interpret that as a score piece. That was an exercise I had to do in school, and I found it to be like really, really fun. But also the fact that I was able to kind of spit that out of my brain was exciting. So I always say just, just because you haven't been engaged for a project doesn't mean you can't try to score something. I would also say to align with people doing short films, because that is a really good way to see if you like doing it and also to see if you enjoy the process of a longer piece of work. It's a good opportunity to align yourself with people who are kind of just starting out too. And I would say that people who are making those films usually end up making longer films, or they make something else and they take you with them if you're their trusted composer. So that's a good place to start. And that's a great place to build a reel and start getting experience on the longer form side of things, because it is a different discipline. For artists, I would say when you feel like you are ready, start talking to people that are doing the music supervision, or start talking to people who have experience in sync, who can put you in touch with people. Sometimes it's a little bit of a fluke. I look in a lot of weird places. Sometimes I'm, scrolling TikTok and I hear something and go, whoa, and the person has 5 views, and I reach out to them and go, I love this. Have you considered like allowing somebody to place this in a show or in a film? And a lot of relationships grow that way. Make sure that when you're sending your stuff out to people that it sounds good. That is like the only thing that I would say. If sonically it's not, we can look past a demo. If it's in demo form and you're working on it, most of us have the vision to be able to go, yeah, this will be great. It has to sound, I would say, just mixed. Make sure that it's just mixed. Because then I'll reach out and go, I think this is ready. I can just throw it in. If it needs more time, I might be willing to wait to use it on another project. But if it doesn't sound good, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. If it needs more work, that's where I can't necessarily show it to a client, and the client has to be able to buy in. So the easiest way, they won't necessarily have the vision that I'll have, or the ability to hear something in a little unformed diamond, a diamond in the rough. But I would say, yeah, that is, make sure that it sounds good. And that's a sure way to help sell it.
That's fabulous. I also love that, that you reach out to folks and it's not necessarily based on like quantity of
Yeah.
followers or likes. I think that's something that can be a barrier for folks starting out, like that anxiety around like how big of a profile do I have yet? Like, am I
Yeah.
there? But I think you're highlighting something that's really important, which is that like at the end of the day, the quality of the work is what's going to drive
That's right.
everything. And I think that's really powerful for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah. Yep. That is right on.
Um, you mentioned like navigating and coaching around like client feedback, and we've talked a little bit about like that particular, this is the kind of unique stakeholder that's in the world of sync. You have these people as stakeholders. It's a little bit different than when you're working in like studio work or on records. Uh, what do you recommend, or like maybe what are some like do's, don'ts, pitfalls you've seen earlier career folks fall into that you would recommend they could have like, if you'd just done this, like suggested workarounds, things like that?
Yeah. So I would say that I've learned so much in my time working in audio and music. One thing that I know is it's important to me, but it's important to the people that I have worked with, is that you are hearing them. When they have feedback for you, you're hearing what they have to say. And even if you don't like what they have to say or you think they're wrong, just hear them, see what they have to say. And if you've got a shared language with them because you're working with them, there's a way to kind of reinterpret it. I would say that most of the time, the clients that we're working with don't have the vocabulary, the musical vocabulary to articulate what's wrong with something. Um, or they just don't have the musical vocabulary to tell you exactly what they want. And a lot of the time, the shared language is references. And so, going into a project that is really, really original song heavy, you're going to hear a lot of references, existing references of music. And you might have another idea for a specific brief. And that's okay to share. That's always okay to share. But the first thing that I think is the most important thing to do is to hear them, because ultimately it is their story that they're telling. And you're supporting that story with your music or the sound design, whatever it is. And um, encouraging them to share how they feel about it, because music is such a like an emotional thing and a vulnerable thing, and sometimes it's challenging to, if you've written a 30 minutes of score and you're very, very in love with it and the client goes, that's not what I was wanting, it's really, really nice, but that's not working for me, that happens. And you have to kind of learn to have a little bit of a thicker skin, because it is really their story that you're helping to tell. And um, before we come into a project, these people have usually been working on the projects in development for years before we get involved. And so there is a lot of love for the project that we're coming into. There's a lot of passion. And sometimes that creates an environment where people feel very vulnerable or feel very emotional about something. And it's important that you're listening. And so approaching things not necessarily delicately, but knowing that you are showing your cards as an artist or as a composer or as a music supervisor, whatever it is, because the creative, like it's two creatives meeting creative in the middle and going, how do we make this work together? And sometimes that is, I'm going to listen to you, you're going to listen to me, and we're going to come together to make sure that we can tell this story in a way that supports how you have envisioned it this whole time that I haven't been involved. And then there's the part where it's, sometimes you'll get feedback where somebody absolutely hates something, but they're not going to fire you over it. So how do we get to a point where I'm understanding what you want from me? And that can be challenging, but it's also very empowering to be able to have those conversations because you can remove your ego from it. You're doing something for them. You know that you have to support them. So how do I remove my anxiety about the creative that I'm putting forward, or how do I remove um, the I feel so vulnerable when I put this forward, and I just want to make sure that you guys are happy. So how do I how do I keep this moving, knowing that you hated everything that I sent the first time, and make sure that you're getting what you want out of it? And that is definitely about developing that shared language. And that's just kind of like listening to people and hearing what they have to say and hearing how they articulate themselves about music. Sometimes we have clients that say it needs to be more blue. And I go, yeah, you mean you want it a little bit more emotional? Do we look at shifting the tone a little bit? And they go, yeah, that's it. That's exactly what I mean when I say blue. So then they can say blue the next time, and I understand what that means. So it's a lot of just like listening, like really listening and making sure that they feel heard. Even if you feel strongly about something, you can say it in a way that won't hurt them, because ultimately it is their project. They can be very, very vulnerable and they're passionate about their projects. And so listen to them, hear what they're saying, and then try to figure out a way that you're not talking at each other about. It's like what do they say? Dancing about It's like dancing about film or something. It's you want to make sure that you are sharing a language, and
Mm.
that is that comes from listening and really, really taking the feedback in a way that helps you kind of continue to be able to do that project with the client. Because
Mm.
usually it happens that you send something out for the first time on a project and they hear it and they go, that's not at all what I wanted. And we have to take a step back, breathe a little bit and go, okay, so now we have to figure out what it is that they want. And we have to make sure that we can apply it across the rest of this season. So it's okay. We start again and we make sure that we are hearing what they want. We are articulating ourselves in a way that's understandable for them as music people, because it can get pretty technical sometimes. Um, and that's part of it. That is, yeah, the first draft is really scary to send. That's right. Um, you take that feedback and you learn to apply it, and it's different every single time. It really depends on who the client is, and that's why listening is so important. Listening and hearing is really, really important.
I feel like you're also highlighting here, I want to lift up like the trust, the mutual trust building as well, like that they're trusting you in a way with their visual baby, right? And you're
That's
trusting
right.
them with your sonic baby, and you're trying to
That's
bring
right.
these two things together. And I really love what you said there too around like the security piece of like trusting a little bit that like just because they didn't necessarily like the first draft doesn't mean you're getting fired immediately over this
That's
project, right?
right.
Like that, and like that feels really scary in this culture
Yes.
of it's so hard to get these placements, it's so hard to get
Yes.
this work. You can feel like it's very tenuous, but if you go into every interaction with that kind of defensive mindset, you are automatically kind of putting yourself in a place where the trust then isn't right there on the surface, and that's going to impact the creative, which
That's
I think is a really
absolutely
powerful
right.
perspective.
Yeah, that is absolutely, especially when you're just starting out, it's hard to take your creative output, put it in front of someone and go, okay, I'm ready for whatever comes at me, I'm ready for it. It I don't think it necessarily gets easier over time. You always want to put your best foot forward. And there with music, there are parts of you in it. Like no matter how much you try to remove yourself, there's a little piece of you in it. And so there is something there is something really special and um delicate about sending something out for the first time, because the you just never know. You never know. We talk and talk about things, especially in the first couple of meetings. We talk about things and we have our spotting session. We might feel like we're totally aligned on something, but it really changes when you remove the temp music from something, or you never had temp music at all and they're hearing it with music for the first time. And uh, it changes the way somebody will view or perceive a film or television show. Score and songs are that intrinsic to the fabric of that art, that it can have such an impact on the way you are perceiving a scene. And so for us to come in and for a composer to come in and score a scene, it's very rarely that it lands 100% the first time. And making tweaks are okay. It's expected. And you learn that over time, that it's not there. It has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with the story that's being told. So as you get a little bit more experience, you are able to go, okay, if you hate it, and we always say that right out the gate now, like, if you hate it, it's okay, just tell us, and our feelings won't be hurt. We just want to make sure that you're getting what you need out of us. So yeah, it's a little delicate balance, but it is also really beautiful because you learn so much about yourself through how you take feedback and through how you're able to rearticulate something. And the really powerful moments come from nailing it once you've had the conversations and once you've made the tweaks. Then it's like, when it's like, yeah, that's approved, that is when we're celebrating, because we've done the job that we've been engaged to do. And our creative output is matching the creative output in a way that the person who is telling the story is very, very happy with.
I love that. And you've mentioned like, you know, this work is so much about serving the story, and not, you know, necessarily one's individual artistic or compositional impulses. And I think that's very, it's a contrast to how like the record making process usually
Yes.
works and when you're working with an artist. But there's great fulfillment to be had there, what you're touching on here. And I'd love if you could share a little bit more about like, was there an instance in your career where you have found like that kind of aha moment of realizing that it was outside of you and to the story, and like what how that influenced your creativity?
Yeah, I think there have been a few times for me where I've gone, as much as I would say that my tastes are very eclectic, uh as it relates to score, as it relates to song, as it relates to music overall. I've had moments in my career where it's not necessarily something that I would um put on at home, but the the interesting part about this job is that you get a little bit of music history and musicology as you are doing it. Every project you take on, you're learning something like really. I don't think I've ever had a project where I haven't learned something pretty profound about the music that relates to the project. And we're often engaged for projects that like require a little bit of research and thought. And the projects that we are lucky enough to get are like really, really, really diverse. And for me, it's an opportunity to learn more about the music that we're replacing, or the music that we have been tasked with finding. And Canada is an incredibly diverse place. The content that comes out of Canada is really, it reflects the fabric of our community here. And so we are often engaged for projects that are very culturally diverse, very musically diverse. And those are instances where I've gone, I'm putting stuff forward. I think this is very interesting. I've done my research here. let's see if it lands. And there's maybe less of the personal, will they like this, will they not like this, because I'm kind of learning at the same time too with that stuff. And so I would say every new project that comes in, especially on the scripted series side or on the feature film side, documentary side, I've learned to like go with the flow, um, do a lot of research. And those are moments where I am able to kind of take a step back from like what this song might mean to me personally, or what this style of music might mean to me personally. And then on the flip side, I've had opportunities to do really interesting projects where, like, I grew up 4 hours north of Toronto, and the punk scene was really bustling when I was growing up. And so I have like a lot of love for really kind of underground, fast and furious punk. And I've had the opportunity to do shows where we're writing original pieces of punk music. And that's really, really, really exciting. So um, it goes both ways. I have had opportunities to take a step back, and then I've had opportunities where I'm like, I love this, and I'm a little bit nervous to put a foot forward here, but I'm going to try it anyway. And they're equally rewarding to me, I think.
I love that. Fast and Furious Punk. I'm gonna need to check out what you
Yeah.
you're gonna have to circulate a playlist.
Yeah.
I'm obsessed. We're gonna move into our Q&A portion soon. So folks, please start putting your questions in the chat. And while you're doing that, I'm curious, Asha, you've touched on like a handful of different awesome skill sets that I think make you so good at what you do, the listening and actually hearing when it comes to clients, budgeting, and being able to have that organizational mindset. But if you had to maybe pick like one particular superpower that someone in your position needs to have, what would you say like that is?
Oh, that's a
And
great question. That is a really great question. I would say the ability to be flexible. That is probably one of the most uh, challenging things to learn, but also one of the most powerful traits to have is to be flexible, because you have to understand that um, music and audio, they're just kind of this intangible thing. And how do you how do you how do you accurately kind of anticipate what a project needs? You can't. It's my creative partner says, how long is a piece of string? That's what we tell the clients too. They ask, well, how much is that going to cost us? How long is a piece of string? Can't tell you. Could be very, very long, could be very short. um, Everything in the business is flexible. It's changing, it's always changing. And so you have to be able to be flexible and to adapt. And that means flexibility in collaboration. It means flexibility in understanding that some projects need more than others. Flexibility in uh, your ability to take feedback and turn that around, and flexibility in how you're working and who you're working with. We still do a ton of short films. I wouldn't turn down a short film. It's important to keep those muscles flexed. It's important to do the big projects. It's important to keep your soul fed with projects that have $0 but mean a lot to you. So flexibility is very, very important.
I think that's evergreen for a lot of roles too, especially in the
Yeah,
music industry. You got to roll with the punches.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
We have some questions coming in the chat. From B, this is kind of a logistical one. How often do you find yourself traveling in your work, and versus like what you're doing remote? I know you're in the studio sometimes. Like where are you when you're doing your job?
Yeah, we are. everywhere all the time. Right now I'm at home, but uh, we bounce from studio to studio. We have two different studios on the go. They're on opposite sides of the city, and it sometimes both studios are going at once. And I'll have to bounce between the two. I do travel quite a bit, but I would say a lot of our work is done in Toronto. Toronto is a big, busy city for film and TV, and there are a lot of major uh, audio post production houses here. And so I'm in our studios, I'm in other people's studios, lots of remote stuff. Our world has opened up because of the ability to work remotely. We've got people in LA that we work with, in New York, in the UK. So um, travel a lot and work in a lot of different studios, but also do a ton of remote work because the world has just opened up that way. It's a great question, though.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We've got a couple of questions here around like how does one break into this space? So like how is your team, you mentioned like sometimes you'll be scrolling on socials or other places like for music discovery, but like if someone is a producer or composer, like what's a great way for them to get their work to you? Do you keep like an ongoing roster of folks that you've identified as of interest? And like how does that like if we could dig into that piece a little bit more, like how can people be found?
Yeah, on the composition side, I would say it's a fairly tight network, but we're always talking to new composers because part of our mandate is to get new people working in this world. But I would say one important thing to do is if you're really, really keen on the world of sync as an artist or as a composer, take a look at the end credits of your favorite show or a film that you've watched and look at who is the music supervisor, who's the music coordinator, and see if you can reach out to those people. For the most part, people are their inboxes are open and they're listening. Um, Sometimes, like for me personally, I get a lot of emails in a day, and might take me a little bit of time to get back to you, but I do my best to respond and to if I hear something and I go, I'm going to bookmark that for later. Um, yeah, I would say people are fairly approachable. So shoot your shot. Yeah.
I love that. And for folks who are interested in being you, the next you, not that anyone can be you, but how would you recommend if someone's interested in like being on your side of the table, as a music supervisor, like getting into that side of the world?
I always suggest there are some really fantastic online courses that give you an intro to music supervision. Take those courses, learn if it's something that you want to do, and from there, start approaching people who are making short films, people who are making um, maybe indie films in your area. And that's a really good way to break in because it gives you the experience and you're able to start building your credits that way or building your reel that way. And of course, talk to music supervisors, talk to people who are doing the job and see if they can mentor you or if they have some advice for you because everybody's different. Some people handle um, different types of projects. We do a lot of like special audio projects that a lot of other music supervisors don't do. And so just talk to music supervisors, see how they got their start, and align yourselves with them. Yeah.
I'm curious if you have, we get this question a lot, like best, I'm sure you get reached out to all the time in your day to day. And I'm sure that some of those outreach emails may be stronger than others.
Yes.
What do
Yes.
you see as some of the like when someone sends something that really stands out to you, why? And if it's something that was like maybe a pitfall, what rubbed you the wrong way?
Yeah, I think that the most compelling thing that you can do is probably introduce yourself, have an easy link to your catalog. I will check out a catalog, especially if it's just like a disco link or something. I will click through. Um, we share stuff internally all of the time. So if you send me something, there's a chance that I've a pretty good chance that I've shared it internally, because we all work on different projects and some people might have a need that I don't have at the moment, but we share that stuff. So I would say um, include something about yourself as a person in the email. That always catches my eye. And then also an easy link to your stuff. And if it's organized and you have instrumentals and all of that good stuff on the link, then it's more likely that I will reach back out to you and say, hey, I actually have this thing right now. It might not be like a super, it might not be like the perfect fit for this particular song, but do you have something else that might fit here? So yeah, definitely tell me a little bit about yourself and send me a link to your stuff.
There's a question here, interestingly, I think also about like unreleased versus released things, and on a similar kind of note, like when it comes to your reel, like having diversity of your catalog or having being more genre specific, knowing that you may not be picking someone for one particular project you have in mind, but you're hoping to like you're kind of thinking about a variety of things. What stands out to you better? What do you recommend for folks to think through in terms of like creating something that's going to stand out in a big way?
Yeah, I would say if it's your artist project, definitely send me something that's best representative of that particular artist project. Because a lot of the time what we're doing is going, who does this style again? Like who's really good in this style? And then going, oh yeah, it's that person. And I'm going to their catalog and digging through with that. If you're a more sync specific artist that is like uh really quite eclectic in the stuff that they're writing and producing, that's great too. I would say that it's I would just think of you as somebody that can kind of do everything. And I would say like put your best foot forward by giving me your like top 5 tracks and going, this is where I really, really stand out. This is where I might not really stand out, but I'm still able to do it. And then if you're an artist that like there are a lot of people that are really kind of locked in on a certain style, that's great. I am all for hearing something that is like new, fresh. If you're doing something that is kind of tried and true, that is great too. We need all of that stuff. So I would say send it. But also, if you are an artist that is doing sync specific stuff, tell me what you are most comfortable doing and show me your like top 5 tracks, because I don't necessarily have the time to go through an entire catalog when I'm digging for something. So if I can kind of just click through and get a sense of what your strengths are, then I will remember that for the future.
Um, there's an interesting question. This is kind of going away from the outreach and reels piece, but back to some of the craft of what you do. A question from Zoe around how do you work with different members on a creative team who might have different visions that may actually be slightly in conflict with one another, and you're sort of like playing a little bit of mediator that might be at the early outset stage of conversations or in the feedback stage. Like, what do you do when you're getting conflicting thoughts?
That happens a lot. That happens a lot, especially when producers, like film producers or TV producers and broadcasters are involved. Sometimes the broadcaster will have a completely different vision and it won't necessarily align with what your showrunner is hoping for. So sometimes that can be a little bit tricky because you have 2 pieces of information that are conflicting and you have to still do the job of getting the composer in the right place and getting the music in the right place. So that again is like having a conversation and seeing where there is middle ground. Our suggestion when we see that conflicting information would be to talk things through and see what are they both saying, and is there a shared thought there? And if there's no shared thought, maybe I can come to the table with something that feels like a middle ground, because we're the experts in the room. They've engaged us to provide our expertise as music people. So we're coming into this situation and going, well, this person's saying this thing, this person is saying this. They're not agreeing. What is the middle? What is the musical middle ground? And it's kind of our job to come in and find that musical middle ground and then appease both people, but knowing that ultimately the sometimes the broadcaster has the final say. They might hate a song that everybody loves and we just have to change it, and that's just the job. Like, we might want to fight for something, but you don't that's not always going to you're not always going to win. So finding the middle ground is very, very important. And also I would say, yeah, finding sometimes they are saying the same thing, but differently. It is framed differently. So how do we understand? How do we try to pull the subtext from the feedback that we're getting? And people are very emotional about music. So sometimes it's like, I hate this. It is too, this is too sad. We have to find something that feels a little bit more aligned emotionally with what we're seeing in the scene. And somebody else comes in and goes, well, I think it's actually doing the right thing. So we come in and go, okay, how do we bridge the gap between these two completely opposite opinions? And that's just part of the job. And again, that's like, how are we interpreting the feedback and then re-articulating what we're giving to the client that hopefully addresses the feedback.
Well said. Well, we're almost at time. I want to thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We tried to get to as many questions as we could. If we didn't get to your question, send us an email and we will pass it along down the pipeline for Asha. I'm going to close out with one final brief question, which is you mentioned at the top of this call that you sort of wish that you'd known about this line of work earlier in your career. And on that note, do you have any like single piece of advice that you either heard at an early stage of your career or wish you'd heard at an early stage of your career that you want to close us out with today?
I would say that one thing that helped me kind of get myself ready to be in this business and to um like prepare my brain for what like just a different landscape than I thought it would be is to never allow somebody to um put your creative output down. If you believe in yourself and you believe in the work that you're doing, I promise you, you will achieve what you dream of achieving. Do not ever put yourself or your creative output down. Look yourself in the mirror and tell yourself that you can absolutely do this because you can. And if you believe you can, you will. I promise you that you will if you believe you can. Do not let anybody tell you otherwise. You can do anything as long as you believe that you can do it and really, really believe that you can do it.
That's what a beautiful way to close this out. I love that. Thank you so much, Asha. Thank you, everyone,
Thank
for joining
you.
us. And
Thanks, everybody.
enjoy your Friday, everybody. Yeah, lots of hearts and rounds of applause.
I love
Thanks,
it. Thank you
everybody.
so much.
Of course.